call the meeting to order. Safety briefing. I'd like to invite our Vice President of Safety, Security, and Business Continuity, Shane Hunter, to provide a brief overview regarding the protocol for all individuals in attendance at the board meeting in the event of an emergency. Thank you.
Currently located in the Legislative Chamber at 1819 Farnham Street on the second floor, which is known inside this building as the LC level. Normal entry and exit was the doors that we came in this morning, but there are two emergency exits. One's located behind the accordion panel wall over here, where you'll find a fire extinguisher, as well as this accordion panel wall over here, where you'll find another fire extinguisher, and the only AED for this room. With the location of the AED in mind, may I see a show of hands of who's CPR and AED trained?
Oh.
Thank you very much. In the event of an emergency, we'd like to use this exit over here. We'll go down one flight of stairs and we'll meet outside if we needed to evacuate the building. March is Severe Weather Awareness Month, so if we needed to seek shelter, we'll go down 2 floors to the H level via the escalator or the stairs. In case of a medical emergency, Zach Valentine will call 911 and meet them at the bottom of the stairs to direct them to this room. That concludes the safety briefing.
Thank you. Roll call.
Howard.
Here.
Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Friend.
Here.
Frost. McGowan.
Here.
Open Meetings Act. I'd like to advise all of those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall of the Legislative Chamber. I would also like to advise that this meeting is being broadcast live. Constructions and operations. Mr. DeBoer, please review the proposed capital expenses.
I will. Good morning. So
Good morning.
We'll get started. My name is Dave DeBoer, Senior Vice President of Operations. We'll get started under tab 5 this morning. This month we've got 7 capital expenditures letters. 3 are systems improvements and 4 are for buildings, plants, and equipment. I'm going to overview 3 of the projects. The first project is item 1 under system improvements for $149,100. This work is to lower a 30-inch ductile iron water main. So this is a fairly large one, to lower a 30-inch ductile iron water main near the entrance of a new Elkhorn High School near 192nd and Burke. The work needs to be completed by May such that subsequent street grading and paving will be finished ahead of school starting this fall. This main was installed in 2015 at an incorrect depth, and the district is seeking correction or reimbursement from the contractor. So we've engaged legal a little bit, but we feel the need to move forward with this project as we work it out with the contractor. It's Cedar.
Cedar. We do a lot of work with them.
We do. So that's why we're pretty confident we can work something out. The second project is item 3 under buildings, plants, and equipment for $237,000 to review and update the Florence Phase 4 and 5 capital improvement plan. The Florence CIP was originally prepared in 2009, so the plan is now 11 years old. So it's getting up there. At that time, several projects were based on unknown regulatory requirements. Approval of this expenditure authorizes the President to enter into a contract with HDR for engineering services to update the Phase 4 and Phase 5 capital improvement plan. So if you just kind of a quick high-level overview, we had about a $200 million project plan around the improvement of Florence. As we wrap up Phase 3, so low service pumps, we brought that, refurbishing some of the basins. We're in final punch list mode of the chemical building. As we wrap up the Phase 3 by the end of this year, we'll have spent about $105 million. So Phase 4 and 5 is still about another $100 million out there. We think with this HDR review that the regulatory requirements will really narrow and probably reduce those budget items going forward. The third project I'd like to overview is associated with buildings, plants, and equipment for $1.1 million for the design and construction of modifications of the LNG tank top. And this is a picture of the LNG tank top going, kind of looking out towards Fort Street and Maple. What you see is a couple large vent pipes off of relief valves on top of that tank. So we're about 100 to 120 feet up in the air. So you're 8 to 10 stories high. Those relief valves are really never supposed to go off. They're a safety mechanism. They have gone off, but the idea is for them to not go off. The purpose of this modification is to really redirect those nozzle loads off of the tank and onto a common platform. And what we'll do is we'll redistribute those operational loads from the relief valves off the nozzle around that platform and back onto the tank. The second item we're going to do, it's kind of difficult to see in the picture, but right in the middle looks like a fire extinguisher. There's a little transmitter. That's off of an NRAF gauge. That's a level indicator for the LNG. It's essentially just a hockey puck that goes up and down. And we're going to put a second one in there to give us redundancy and a more reliable second source of measuring the tank level. And then the third item we're going to do at this tank top is relocate a vent valve that's currently at a compressor building. We use that vent valve to relieve natural gas during operational and maintenance items associated with doing work in and around that LNG station. So if we're working on the TBS and we need to isolate or shut down the plant, that gas will be moving on. Is that me? That gas will be moving on to through that vent, and will be at a much higher location near the top of this tank. This is a picture of the common platform, and you can see the relief valves go out to a stanchion. That stanchion is now on the platform. And it's hard to see, but right in the middle, it's red, is a little transmitter. That's associated with the NRAF gauges off of each one of those nozzles. So with that, our request is to authorize the president to enter into an agreement with CHI Engineering. Again, this is a cryogenic fluid that gets down to minus 265 degrees. So we want to stay with the same engineering firm, but to authorize the president to enter into a contract with CHI Engineering for the design and construction of LNG tank top modifications. Any questions on the CNA letter?
Good visual aids.
Yes, thanks to Director Howard for the request. I said we'd be happy to do that. Moving into tab 6, acceptance of contracts and payments of final estimates. We have 4 final estimates that are being finalized. All 4 of these projects are within 10%. The actual price was within 10% of the unit price bids. 2 of them were a little bit lower, 2 were a little bit higher, but overall they all looked really good. And that's all I had on the acceptance of contracts and payments of final estimates. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Zellers will review the bids on materials and contracts.
Good morning. Excuse me. John Zellers, Director of Purchasing. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 7. There are a few items I'd like to discuss this morning, and the first 2 are to highlight 2 water main projects. Avenue 1 at the bottom of page 1, and Waterford Crossing replat 27 at the top of page 2. Both projects will use PVC pipe and are the first 2 subdivisions we will contract out to use this pipe material. We are currently finalizing a water infrastructure replacement project in which PVC pipe is being installed. Mr. Nia's presentation later in the meeting will highlight this project and discuss benefits around PVC pipe. We are recommending the low bids from Cedar Construction, who is experienced with installing PVC water mains, to be approved for both of those projects. The next item I'd like to discuss may be found in the middle of page 2. We accepted bids for the purchase of 7 slide gates for the Florence Basin 2 renovation project. 2 bids were received, in which we are recommending the bid from RW Gate Company, as the bid submitted by WIPS didn't meet hydraulic requirements and didn't meet other provisions stated in the specifications. RW Gate Company meets specifications and all requirements and is recommended for approval. On the same page, you will see that we accepted bids for the security system for the new headquarters, which includes card access, turnstiles, and cameras. We are recommending the low bid from Prime Communications. The last 2 items I'd like to discuss are associated with the purchase of resilient seated gate valves. The bid that may be found at the bottom of page 2 is for various large gate valves that will be used on 2 water main projects that we took bids on this month. We are recommending American Underground's bid, as they are the lowest bid that meets specifications. And on the top of page 3 is our annual requirement for 4-inch through 12-inch resilient seated gate valves, in which we are recommending municipal supplies bid as they are the lowest that meet specifications. And that's all I have for you this morning, and would be happy to answer any questions. Yes?
John, one quick question on the bottom of page 3, the 3 lawn mowing contracts?
Yes.
Maybe this is for Bonnie too, but I thought our summer help did a lot of the lawn mowing. Part-time help.
So within the plants, Summer Help has done lawn mowing for us in the past. I believe that is being reviewed. I'm not sure if that will continue. But with inside like Florence and Platte South, that work is either done by internal crews or possibly Summer Help. These contracts are for the headquarters, for the operations center, construction center, and for a lot of the regulator stations, town border stations, well houses, pump stations, a lot of those satellite type locations as well.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Those go up for bid annually, John, on the lawn maintenance?
Unless we feel that that is to our best interest to extend the contract. So the last time we went out to bid was 2018, and last year there were 2 contractors that were awarded bids in 2018, and they chose to hold their price, and so we evaluated that and brought that to the board to extend those prices. This year we felt that we should go out for bids.
Okay, thank you.
Does this also include chemical treatment and so forth besides mowing?
Yes, it is
Weeds.
in there. We have bid items for that service as well.
Well, you separate
For her-
that.
Correct, yep, we have bid items for all of those areas. So this is not a lump sum bid by any means. So all these individual areas that I spoke about, the pump station and so forth, those are all individually line itemed out.
Okay, thank you.
And if you will notice, this is actually for a 3-year agreement.
Mr. Friend just pointed that out.
All right.
Mr. Friend.
Okay.
So I did say we're going to bid it next year, so I was incorrect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Friend. All right. Any further questions?
Good. Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, will you review the proposed mean extensions?
I would be glad to. Good morning. Corey O'Brien, Vice President, Engineering and Construction. Behind tab 9 this morning, we have our main extension letter, and we have 5 projects this month, all of them being water projects. The impact of these projects is 3 single residence lots, 1 multi-residence lot, and 9 commercial developments. I'm actually going to touch on 4 of the 5 projects, going to spend a little more time on 2 of them though. So the first one being project number 2 on page 2. This is a main extension to provide domestic water service and fire protection to a commercial development for Project Wizard in the area of Schramm Road between 144th and 168th Streets. This is a large multi-phase main extension consisting of approximately 3 miles of pipe ranging in size from 12-inch to 36-inch. The phase 1 of the project is for a 12-inch main extension and is 100% funded by the developer. Phase 2 is a 16-inch main extension and is also 100% funded by the developer. On phase 3, there's a 24-inch main extension, and that is also 100% funded by the developer. Also on phase 3, there's a 36-inch main extension. That is approximately 60% funded by the developer. The other 40% is being funded by the district. Now that 40% represents about $1.4 million. And just as a reminder, that the water system has improvements such as oversizings for transmission mains. That is funded through the collection of impact fees. So all in, the developer is funding approximately 82% of this project, and the district is funding 18%. One other thing I need to point out on this project, I didn't include it in the letter, is that on phase 2, we are currently negotiating with a contractor for the installation of the 16-inch pipe on phase 2, and that's about a mile of 16-inch. Approval of the CNA for this project will also authorize the president to enter into a contract with the contractor should our negotiations be successful. Any questions on that one in particular before I move on? There's kind of a lot of numbers there, but we're good? Okay. Item 3, or project 3 on page 2, I'm only going to mention it as it's one of the PVC projects that Mr. Zellers mentioned in his letter. Project 4 at the bottom of page 2 is a main extension. It's an infill main centered around a Habitat for Humanity project. It's going to install about 400 feet of 8-inch main in Pratt Street between 28th Street and 28th Avenue. Habitat for Humanity is developing 3 single residence lots along that stretch, and as such, they are funding approximately 37% of the project. The other 63% of the project is being funded by the district to the tune of about $51,000. However, in this case, because this is an infill main, we have the ability to recover all of that $51,000 going forward as properties adjacent to the main develop, or as existing private lines fail, they will be required to connect to this main and contribute back to it. So one of the advantages of putting this main in as an infill main is it prevents 3 additional private lines, plus it ties together 2 dead-end mains that exist in our system, so it'll increase fire protection and system reliability. I think that's all on that one. The last one is the project number 5 on the last page, and again, that's just being mentioned because it is the other PVC project that Mr. Zellers talked about. Any questions? Great, thank you.
Looks
so much.
good, thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Savine? You will review, please review, the employee wage and salary increases and ramifications and the summer student work program. Thank you.
You bet. Good morning, Bonnie Savine, Vice President, Human Resources. A recap of the February employee counts for 2019 and 20 are as follows. On February 28th, 2019, our regular full-time employee count was 805, along with 7 regular part-time employees. So we had a total of 812 regular employees. On February 29th, our leap year this year, we had 819 regular full-time and 4 regular part-time. So that gave us a total of 823 at the end of February this year. We do still have 2 temporary employees working at this time. Moving on to tab 10, this is the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications letter. Human Resources is recommending the Board of Directors approve wage increases for 4 employees this month. 3 OAC employees are being promoted, and then additionally 1 OAC employee will be promoted due to a natural job progression. Any questions on that letter? Okay. And the next item that's on the agenda, we will throw up some slides here for you, and you do have a handout in front of you for reference as well. So in taking a look at the summer student work program, I wanted to outline a few of the guidelines for the program. So we are in the midst of bringing candidates into the application process, so it's a great month for us to highlight this program. MUD's summer employment program is open to all bona fide college students in the metro area, including children of district employees. Students must have completed at least 1 year of college to be eligible. That's typically 24 credit hours. College-bound students that are registered for fall 2020 classes are also eligible to apply, and those candidates are considered after the existing college students. The size of the program in any summer is based on the district's approved budget for the summer student numbers. For 2020, the approved budget is 30 students, and they are spread out in a variety of divisions across the district. Only applicants who are 18 years old will be considered prior to being hired. The work schedule is Monday through Friday. It is a full-time job, and it is 40 hours per week. So it's a very good opportunity for them to see how full-time work would be at a large organization. Students are eligible to work for up to 2 summers, and if there is a shortage of applicants, the district may allow a 3rd summer of employment for students, and at that time we would also consider hiring more than 1 member of the same family. These students, however, are again considered after reviewing district needs and all of the other students that apply. 3rd-year students are paid at the same rate as 2nd-year students. And so the 2020 summer worker rates are $12.50 an hour for 1st-year students and $13.50 an hour for 2nd-year students. One more slide for you, some additional details. Positions are broken down into 4 categories. We began doing that so that students could apply for a position that had some job duties that fit their interests a little bit more. Those categories are clerical, field or survey worker, painter, and laborer. And likewise, those jobs do have some different minimum requirements, such as some require a valid driver's license and the ability to work outside in certain weather conditions. So students can apply for one or all 4 positions by category. They can do that by filling out an application. The application for the program is available online only, and it is found on the district's website, which is www.mudomaha.com. They would look for the Careers tab that's at the top of the homepage. And once they click there, they will be able to access the summer applications, where the deadline is March 31st of this month. Work begins as early as May 4th and concludes no later than Friday, September 11th for this year. All individuals selected for summer employment are required to pass a background check and medically administered drug screen to be eligible to work. And students that apply will begin receiving contact from Human Resources later this month.
Very comprehensive. Thank you, Bonnie.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Mr. Kubot, please give us your second legislative report for 2020. You don't look too beat up.
It's early. Good morning, Rick Kubot, Government Relations. Today is day 35 of the 60-day session, which is tentatively set to adjourn on April 23rd. I'm going to skip around on the report a little bit, and then we'll be more than happy to come back and answer any questions you have on some of the other bills not covered. On the first page, the third bill down, is LB 242. That was Senator Lindstrom's priority bill, which was the sales tax turnback bill. A couple of weeks ago, that bill made it to the floor. It was a strange morning because there were only 38 senators present that morning. There was a test vote on an amendment in which we had 25 supporters of that bill to advance the amended version of that bill. I believe if the full body was present, we likely have somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 supporters of that piece of legislation. Unfortunately, it was filibustered, requiring 33 votes. The primary concern of opponents were the fiscal consequences, because when fully implemented, it had a $24 million fiscal note that would be ongoing year after year. It's certainly competing with numerous other items in front of the legislature in terms of budget considerations, most notably property tax relief, which right now is somewhat of a moving target. In addition to that, the business tax incentive bill has not yet been heard. UNMC is getting some funding for their project. And then, of course, you've got jail overcrowding and the YRTC and numerous other concerns. Where we're at right now with that bill, Senator Lindstrom would need to show the Speaker a vote card of 33. He's working towards that. He's relatively optimistic on being able to get that 33, but it's something that is his goal at this point in time. I'm going to move on unless there's any questions related to that. I'm going to skip all the way to page 3. And I'm going to talk about the second and third bill listed. I'm going to speak to them collectively. That would be LB 802 and LB 845. The reason why I bring these two bills to your attention is because they look to change water law in Nebraska. The reason why I'm talking about them collectively is they essentially do the opposite things. LB 802, for the most part, would clarify what's in Nebraska law, which specifically states that you can't separate ownership from the land to the below-ground water rights. For the most part, it's a codification of what current law states, and to some degree, it's a reaction to Senator Groney's bill, which is 845. What Senator Groney would like to do is there's the NCORE project, which is a water augmentation project out in and around Lincoln County, where several NRDs purchased roughly 19,000 acres, retired the land, and are using the below-ground water to augment stream flow at this point in time, primarily to the Republican River system. At the end of the day, my expectations for both of these bills is for neither of them to go anywhere, but anything that touches upon water law, I think, needs to be brought to this board's attention. After that, we have LB 890, which is Senator Hughes's bill that would allow political subdivisions to use design build. That bill has been amended onto another bill, LB 790, and right now it sits on select file. So that one looks like it may very well go. Really, that's all that I have for you this morning. I know that you're previously provided a report by Mr. Mendenhall, and I want to thank him for helping me out that day. If you have any questions, I'll take them.
There's no change in position, therefore no need for a vote on this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And neither 802 or 845 have been prioritized? The two competing water bills?
Neither one has. That's correct.
Anything else?
Senator Lindstrom's bill to be filibustered again if he were to able to get those 33
I would.
commitments? That's okay.
Which is interesting because, as you know, 33 is the magic number to overcome a filibuster. So if he gets folks to sign off on the 33 and they hold to their support, you would have enough votes to overcome the filibuster. So that's the hope at this point in time.
Do you feel as though the body understands the issue, not necessarily from our perspective, but it's just people are staking their claims for this money for the thing they want?
That's well put.
It sounds a little bit cynical, I apologize.
The-
But
I look at it as one big bowl of cash, and various senators, whether you're a senator that's promoting business incentives or you're one that's very concerned with property tax. Senator Lindstrom's bill was out in front of those two bills, and the hope is once those two issues get worked out, I think the full body will have a better understanding of how much general fund dollars. But what you said is correct. It's very much a concern of the fiscal consequences associated with the bill.
in the governor's office, that's what they're saying?
The governor's office, as far as I'm aware of, technically doesn't have a position on the bill. That being said, you could surmise otherwise by what some specific state senators that tend to be what I would say in his voting camp.
Okay.
A lot of those folks were present, not voting. There were only two senators that voted against the bill. It was
Anticipate this going down to the wire to the end of the session, or will we know sooner than later?
I believe we'll have a pretty good idea of where we're at by our next board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for being down there. Thanks for fighting the good fight for us.
I'm enjoying myself down there.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you.
Let's see. Committee of the Whole. Now we will hear from the district's Director of Infrastructure Integrity, Neha.
Nia.
Apologize already for
Sorry.
that.
Masa Nia, Director of Infrastructure Integrity.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to provide a brief update on our gas IR program. We've come a long ways since 2008, drastically improving the integrity of our distribution system on the gas side. And then I'll turn it over to the water side and provide an update there on where we're at and where we're heading. So this is a graph looking at the cast iron gas main breaks on the gas side. This is our highest risk of failure asset on the gas. And as you'll know, you'll see, the chart is a 40-year break rate that goes up to 2009. So this is going back about a decade. And as we were looking at this over the years, we realized more needed to be done. The trend line for these break rates were increasing exponentially. Now we fast forward a decade. This includes 1980 to 2019. Since the start of our gas IR program in 2008, we've been increasing the replacement rate of cast iron gas mains. And as you can see, the break rate is starting to curve down, and we're starting to see the benefits of all this work. We're currently replacing 40 miles of cast iron gas mains per year, and at that replacement rate, we're on schedule to have all the cast iron replaced by 2027. Now here's a look at our projects for 2020 on gas IR. What you're seeing here is in the light brown, we've got our low pressure cast iron system. And then in the red areas, we've got our selected 2020 gas IR projects. And just for a frame of reference, I got the, what's shown there in the lower left is the city of Ralston. So if you look at the size comparison, we are replacing as much pipe as the size of a small city there. So it really is impressive what our IR program is accomplishing on the gas side. All this is being done while we're still getting work done with expanding our system. And we've been seeing growth out west as well, up to 30 miles of new gas mains going in each year. So it's really a compliment to the district on having a focus on the gas IR while still being able to meet new development needs. Now we'll turn our attention to the water side. We have had 575 main break events in 2019. Each of these dots represented on this map shows the locations where it's happening throughout our distribution system. About 80% of these are on our cast iron mains, but they really are happening across the system on different materials on the water side. So we've got about 448 of these breaks in 2019 that happened on the cast iron mains. Each of these breaks causes a lot of damage. Pressurized water coming out of our pipeline. Last year, to repair all of these breaks, we spent a total of $7.8 million to make the repairs. Now, these are just the direct costs to our ratepayers to simply get the main back in service and make the repair. There are also indirect costs related to each of these breaks. Breaks that will impact traffic, our customers' water service, and some of these customers are very dependent on the need for water service to run their business. This photo here is a break that happened in October at 17th and Jackson. It caused $370,000 in direct costs of damage. The building on the right side was flooded, the basement filled with water as part of the main break. So you could see how much damage is caused just by the release of that volume of water. Our response to this main break was great. We went after this water main that was installed in 1895, and obviously it has a very high consequence of failure. And our crews went out there and began replacing it so we could remove this out of our system. Alicio Pereira right there in the trench. He'd much rather be scheduled to replace this main than be called out in the middle of the night when these main break events can happen. Now looking at the cast iron category only, where we've got the highest risk in our system, we look at the break rates over the last 40 years, and we're also increasing exponentially here. I'd like to point out if we didn't start our IR program in 2008 and replaced 89 miles of cast iron main since then, we'd have a sharper curve upward on this main break trend. To give us an idea how this is increasing, going back to 1958 when we were collecting main break data, we had 58 breaks back in 1958. So there's no doubt this is increasing each and every year on the trend line. So we know we need to be doing more to be able to turn this curve. We've been averaging 8 to 10 miles a year over the past decade, but to make this more sustainable, we need to be able to get to 25 miles. And the reason 25 miles is a goal is that gets you on a 120-year replacement cycle. And there are things that we're doing to try to increase the replacement cycle so we're getting the most out of our pipe, and I'd like to touch on that here in a bit. As you can see on the bar graph, this is a stepped up approach where we have multi-years of the same mileage. And that's a strategic approach so we can make those increases and evaluate our approach and adjust from that to seek some efficiencies.
Question on that
Yes.
trend line or the mileage goals. I know we have a new crew going into place this year. To get to the 15, the 20, 25, do we foresee additional crews that we have to hire and staff up and get the equipment for them to hit those goals?
Yeah, that's how you get mains either replaced or renewed. Is we're going to have more resources out in the field, and the board approved an additional being dedicated to targeting these mains this
I guess
year.
my question is, are we looking at hiring more crews internally to hit those goals, or to expand our use of partners and contractors?
And that's something we'll be evaluating as the work's completed, seeing the cost and effectiveness of each. There's definitely right fits within our system where lining technology or something we're looking at like a pipe bursting construction method might be more favorable. So as we start planning ahead, some of that might direct which direction we go.
Do we have any idea of the length of time that it takes? I know they're probably the breaks are vary and they're different and the pipes are different, but do we have any average length of time that we project when a break happens? And I'm thinking of how long these businesses are going to be without people coming in. There's no place to park. The disruption.
Yeah. That's one of our KPIs is how long it takes to get the main back in service, and we do that very well. We respond and we're able to. We've got processes in place to restore water service. The second part of that is the damage the water creates when a main break happens. So cleanup definitely will take longer, and getting paving back in place adds to that time as well.
Do we have an average length of time, that weeks?
It's
varies.
For example, that 17th and Jackson, because we reacted to it and wanted to get that high consequence main out of the ground, we were out there weeks. It really varies. The average main break, if it's in street paving, it could be a few days after we make the repair immediately, and then it gets backfilled and paving's put back, and we got to allow time for that concrete to cure. Each and every break's different, but I think around three days is probably your average. But we've seen
that's amazingly
ones go
good.
a lot
That
longer,
is a credit to our employees that they get that done so quickly, because I appreciate the disruption to the businesses, especially.
certainly is. There's a focus, a concerted effort to try to get it back to restored condition. And you look at some of these main break locations, and there's one in my neighborhood last year, and you drive by it, and you would have no idea there was a main break there before.
Good.
So looking ahead as we take our journey up to 25 miles of replacement and on a 120-year replacement cycle, this is a chart looking ahead into the future, and we've got a lot of data points to make this a very predictable model. The top dash line is if we were to maintain at a 10 mile per year replacement rate, and we would not be turning the curve to lower the main break rate. And the solid blue line is getting up to 25 miles per year. Now, one thing I want to point out is that we're doing a lot of other initiatives besides just replacing the pipe. So it's not only replacement that will help lower these break rates, and so we're looking at all different options here. So I'm optimistic that we can turn it sooner, but this is just looking at the data we have at this point. Some of those other initiatives I just want to touch base on briefly. As you're aware, we've got VFD, variable frequency drive projects at pump stations to help reduce the stress on our systems, on our water distribution system as we turn pumps on and off. It'll help regulate pressures better. We also have some initiatives out there to better maintain our water mains during opportunistic repairs where we'd install an anode. And an anode's a sacrificial metal like inside of a hot water heater that helps it make it last longer. And we'll attach that to the water main during repair just because we have it exposed, and it's an inexpensive insurance measure there. Now, looking back at 2019, our projects that we completed, and part of this is we're equipping ourselves to look at those increases going forward. We had our crews take care of this, and we've got contractor partners along with some technologies with lining, and I'd like to touch base briefly on a few of these. So the technology we looked at last year to help get to 10 miles of main renewal is our contractor FERPAL, who worked with Hymus on lining our water mains. And that little picture on the lower left, it's an image of a liner going inside of the cast iron main at this location. And this is injected with some epoxy that helps reinforce the main and gives it added life. It's a method that's used around the country for rehabbing problematic cast iron and ductile iron mains. During this process, the main's taken out of service. So what you're seeing in this photo along the curb line is the blue piping. It's called bypass piping. And that piping provides our customers water service during this rehab work. One of the lessons learned last year was we were having some challenges getting the bypass piping to pass tests before we were able to hook it up to the customers. And it's just making sure our water's clean before our customers are using our water. And so we've got some changes in place for this year as we're continuing with FERPAL and Hymus to increase our likelihood of those pipes passing before our customers can drink and use the water out of the bypass piping. Next up north, near 48th and Military, our contractor partner, M.E. Collins, was installing PVC water mains to replace 100-plus-year-old cast iron mains in the Benson area. As Mr. Zellers mentioned, there are benefits to PVC pipe. In the photo here, you can see how lightweight it is and easy it is to handle instead of needing to rig up heavier metallic piping to a machine and move it from location to location. One or two guys can carry it over to the install location. So on this project, on the right side, you see a directional boring machine, and that's a trenchless technology that pushes rods through the ground and pulls back that PVC pipe. Now, there's no perfect pipe material out there. The utilities have different preferences across the country. PVC pipe, although it has zero chance of corrosion, like we've seen on our cast iron system and unprotected ductile iron, it's not as strong of a material, and it's not as flexible at the joints. The key to making sure with this material or any material is that it gets installed right, and if that's done, then we'll get our 120-year life out of that pipe. And last 2019 project or construction resource I'd like to touch on is a big move we've made at the district here, which is our dedicated water eye gang. They started work at 60th and Ames in June of last year. This bore rig right here did a record bore shot. They pulled in an 8-inch zinc-coated ductile iron water main as part of the install to replace the old failing cast iron main, and it did a 710-foot pull on the bore shot. The previous record with a smaller piece of equipment was 400 feet. But there's a lot of efficiencies in being able to go further with these bore shots, less excavations and less disruption to our customers in that area. But this crew is dedicated solely to replacing our highest risk water mains in our system, and we've got an additional one budgeted for this year. So look ahead to 2020. The blue areas are different areas that we are targeting, and these are areas with the highest risk water mains. In these areas, we've had over 300 historical main breaks. So it definitely is a high consequence or high likelihood area of water mains failing. And I'd just like to touch base on one of these 2020 projects using a new material called HDPE for us on the IR program. HDPE isn't new to us. We've used it before to bore underneath creeks or get through areas where we needed the flexibility out of the pipe, where ductile iron wasn't as feasible. But using it for a replacement project is new to us. We're looking at an experienced contractor with HDPE to come in and use that. And you can see in the photo here, these aren't pictures in Omaha. These are a utility in Indiana where you see the flexibility that HDPE offers. It's similar in characteristic to plastic gas piping.
Masa, quick question. Is the PVC and the HDPE are both of a plastic variant, aren't they? And is the HDPE more flexible?
Yes.
Less
yes.
rigid? Is that kind of the difference?
That's an accurate statement. It's PVC is rigid, and we've got to be careful when it's installed that it doesn't get stressed, because it can have a tendency to crack if it's not installed by its guidelines. Where HDPE is very flexible. In the picture here, you can see in the background before it's going into the ground on the far left picture, it's actually wrapped around a coil, into a coil, really compacting the area it's taken up. So you definitely wouldn't be able to do that with PVC.
So the PSI is equivalent on them? It's just how flexible a pipe that you need? Is that kind of the flexibility of the pipe?
Yeah. As far as the approved rating of the pipe, that's tested with each material. And if you look at HDPE, it's a lot thicker than PVC, and PVC is even thicker than our zinc-coated ductile iron that we're using.
Masa, does it come in the bigger diameter than this? Because it looks like what we were using was for a workaround for a temporary solution for customers while the permanent work is being done. Does it come in larger size?
It does. Typical installation sizes for IR work is 6 and 8 inch, but they do manufacture up to larger transmission sizes. There are disadvantages and advantages as you get larger. Some of the disadvantages as you get larger is just the connections. It takes a long time to melt that plastic and to have it ready for construction. The advantages obviously is its flexibility and there's no corrosion concerns in the future.
How does that compare cost-wise?
Just for the material?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's PVC is a lower in cost in comparison to ductile and HDPE, and depending on how thick we'd need to go, ductile iron and HDPE become comparable, are in the same price range. But really, when we start looking at this, it's overall what's the product that's going to give us the lowest life cycle cost, which includes the initial install and even future maintenance. And HDPE, in the future, if it is damaged, it takes a little bit more work to repair that piping.
Masa, I have a question that's more related to pipes in general. Our risk factors for this deterioration are time, our climate. Is there anything that we can control and be forward thinking about?
Definitely.
Because we can't really control those.
Weather and climate's a big impact to us, and we see that with our main breaks. But yeah, certainly with what we can control, it's what we're designing, putting out there, what we're seeing our crews and our contractors install, how well it's getting installed. And you talk to utilities across the country, and they say that's the key, is any pipe material on paper, they'll tell you, depending on who's writing that report, that it's the best product out there and it'll last a long time. But a lot of that comes down to, will it be installed right or not?
All right.
Great question. So we all know that water main replacement work is not easy or inexpensive work. As we take our journey to 25 miles in these step methods, the 2020 cost of replacement is about $1.5 million per mile. So looking at these costs over the next decade of spend, we're looking upwards of $350 million. And just to give it a frame of reference, you recall Platte West, the construction of the Platte West water treatment plant, it's in the ballpark of building a water treatment plant. And this is going to continue on each decade as we've got to stay on top of the replacement work, and there's no end in sight for the water replacement program. So this is a very simple line graph where the green line represents net zero, where our cash position on our IR funds sits. And we've got a linear asset management committee that looked at various scenarios trying to balance sustainability with affordability. And when I say sustainability, I'm talking about our main break rates and what's the appropriate level of service. And this is the one that followed the net zero line the closest. Other scenarios, as we know, the 10 miles per year doesn't work, but that never crosses net zero. So this is something we're going to continue to evaluate each year. Our committee will get together and look at the balance between the affordability and our level of service.
Help me out here, I don't understand that net zero. Will you explain that again?
Yeah, so this is our cash on hand within our water IR program. So within a given year, if we were right at zero, the funds we have available would be identical to the funds being spent on the IR program.
Does that include our WIR revenues and the revenues from our depreciation component combined?
It does, yes.
Mike, Joe Shafford, I can add a little perspective to that. So as you're aware, these components of our rates that are directed at this, both the fixed component and the new variable component, are segregated into a separate fund, if you will. So this is the bank balance cumulative that he's put on that slide. So we actually go negative on a cumulative basis in about 2032, and it reaches a cumulative negative that reaches about 13 million several years later, and then it goes back up. But the other thing to keep in mind when you do a multi-year financial model like this, there's a lot of assumptions built in, right? The first is we've assumed a 3% annual increase in the rate of replacing a main. So it starts at $1.5 million a year. At a 3% growth rate, it doubles in 24 years. So that's what that does. Now, again, there's a lot of efforts being put forth to try to make that more efficient, to replace/rehabilitate the main. The other thing a model like this really counts on, though, is the discipline to have consistent rate increases on an annual basis. They'll say modest, because if you do a modest rate increase every year, the math works. So order of magnitude, the model assumes an increase to the commodity component of revenue for infrastructure of about 4.5% to 4.7% per year, keeping in mind, though, that the commodity component represents about 44% of a customer's bill, because service charge and water infrastructure, the old component, are fixed. So the all-in rate increase is about 2.2% a year. So if we have the discipline to do that on an annual basis, the math works to fund it. But that's really what it takes, is a commitment to a multi-year rate strategy to make the math work.
Well, that intrigues me, because that was one of my next questions, is how disciplined do we have to be to fund this effort? Because this board has, every year we'll have a budget, and what it sounds like we're going to be faced with 4.5% just on the commodity component.
Right.
Which rolled in with the fixes, 2.5% roughly.
Right, right.
To our ratepayers.
Right.
And if we don't do that, this graph will change dramatically.
Absolutely.
So we
It
gotta be
relies
committed
on, you're right.
To, not only to having the crews and to get it done, we gotta be committed to having the funding there.
You're right.
Thank you.
And the point that Masa made, that's the other thing to really keep in mind, though, is unlike a lot of, like he mentioned the water plant as an example. Well, if it's a one-time spend, you can bond it. But this effectively is annual maintenance.
Yeah.
So you don't bond something like that. You have to have a rate structure that supports it every year.
Right, right. And if, like you said, the foreseeable future, we're gonna be fixing these water mains, cast iron mains breaks for the foreseeable future. And so if we don't, it's gonna just get worse. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're dedicated to finding the most effective ways to go about our water IR program because of the magnitude of spend we're talking about. We are looking at all different technologies as well. Condition assessment technologies is one way utilities across the country and we're taking part of to increase the replacement cycle of our water mains. And when I say condition assessment technologies, there's a wide array of them. And the photo on the left is one example of this technology. This is called the Pika Sea Snake. And it's one of the more granular condition assessment technologies out there. It'll give you more data as it's inserted inside of a water main. It uses electromagnetic sensors on it to pick up the remaining wall thickness of a pipeline. And that helps in a couple different ways. You're making sure you're not replacing mains before you really need to replace them. And you're targeting the worst pipe in your system. So that's one example, and there are other less costly ones that give you less granular data, and we're exploring those as well. Another technology I want to touch on is the leak monitoring devices we have out there. And leak monitoring is something we've done as part of our maintenance program with our technicians going out there and listening for leaks when there's evidence of a leak occurring. With the technology available today, with cell phones and the cell towers being able to receive data, the device you see pictured in the middle, the blue can-shaped device, it has a SIM card in it, and it can send data as it's sitting on top of a water valve that it picks up the sound of a water leak noise. And it goes through its algorithm to determine whether it's likely a leak or not. As we've tested this out over the past few months, we got 2 notices that there might be a leak in the Westgate neighborhood, just west of 72nd and Grover, and we were able to make a couple repairs out there. And the advantage of that is that we can go out there and make scheduled repairs, and before the water bursts and becomes much more costly and disruptive. So that was really exciting to be able to go out there and make those repairs and see this technology work.
What's the width or how broad do they monitor? Is it just local right there, or does it go out down the main and try to see if there's a leak down a mile down, or?
Yeah, it's dependent on the pipe material and pipe size, how the sound carries along the pipeline. But in that Westgate neighborhood, we can space them about 400 or 500 feet, basically where our hydrants are at, and then it starts correlating between the two to identify where that leak sound is coming from. It's really cool technology that's been growing the past few years. And with that, I want to thank you for this opportunity to present our IR program. We've got dedicated employees like John Becklin, Colton Meter, and Clayton Hill. That's part of our I-gang that's passionate about getting our risky mains out of our system and improving the integrity of our water mains. And with your IR funding that you approved over the past year, we are on solid ground to continue our IR work for the next decade, so I want to thank you for that. Now, are there any more questions?
I just wanted to say thank you. And I've had the privilege of working with MASA in the past on a few projects, and I think the customer owners of MED should be very confident that someone of MASA's caliber and intellect is overseeing this project.
Thank you. And I've learned on my job from so many people around me, other engineers, the experience from the field. So I wasn't raised with this knowledge. It's really my coworkers and colleagues out there in the water industry that I give credit to. Thank you.
Thank you. My microphone's on. Mark Doyle, President. I just want to put a few comments on top of MASA's presentation. First of all, I want to compliment and thank the board for your support. 5 of the financial or the overriding principles that we've been talking about for the last few years are infrastructure replacement, reliability, maintaining bond debt covenants, keeping our promises to our employees in terms of pension and other post-employment benefits, and most of all, affordability. We know this is a challenging program. It's not just a project, and MASA's right. This is a team effort. I couldn't be prouder of all of our staff, and I'd start with our crews to say that to answer a little deeper on Ms. Howard's question on what's the average time of disruption for a water main break, we do keep key performance indicators or KPIs on the average time that a customer is actually out of water versus total restoration where grass is being replaced and concrete is being replaced and all those sort of things. We rank amongst the best in terms of the time a customer is out due to a disruption. The rest of it, depending on, we have the city of Bellevue, we're in Omaha. We don't always do our own concrete replacement. We're talking about that too. Sometimes maybe we should. That's a bigger topic for another day. But we're very, very, very good at responding to water main breaks and emergencies and gas emergencies. We're very good at it. In the case of water main breaks, we have a lot of them. We do it a lot. We're really good at it. We're going to stay good at it even when we have less of them. To answer Mr. McGowan's questions on our resources going forward, we're not ready to make a commitment, but we cannot do this going into the future to get back to the point where we always should have been with maintenance. How long will a main last? What's the useful life? How often do we replace? It's probably around 100 years, but don't quote me on that. To get back to the point where we're replacing either 25 miles or a certain amount of revenue, because not every mile is the same. 1 mile of high consequence concrete pipe might be 50 miles of 6-inch mains in neighborhoods. So we're learning, we're gonna talk about it differently, but we need to get to a point where every year, just like the city of Omaha is talking about how many lane miles of concrete they need to replace to eliminate potholes, we need to know how many water mains every year we need to replace to make sure we're not in the position we are now with way too many water main breaks. If it would get bigger, that one graph that Masa showed is very important. A do nothing, that line rises to the point where it's a risk to the sustainability of the utility. We're not going to do that because of your support, and it's not easy. When we have to ask for more money from our neighbors and our communities, it's not easy. But our promise to you is that we're going to be as cognizant of performing to the level that our community expects when we do that. So I want to thank you for your support and know that when we ask for more resources, it's not without deep thought and commitment. But we can't do this without expanding our internal crews over time. There's no way we can. Our partners are great, but we do it best. And that ties right back into our facility master plan. One of our barriers right now are having everything in one spot. So we're going to be talking about that and escalating that discussion too. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you for the presentation, Masa. And Corey's group, engineering, design, and services, you're all working together so well. And I couldn't be prouder, and I feel better today than I did a couple years ago. So thank you.
Mark, let me add to that. You said it's very difficult to ask for more money from our ratepayers and all that. What makes me feel good is we're getting our hands around this issue, and we have a strategic plan to address it. Yes, it's difficult to ask for more money, but if we don't, down the road, they're going to be paying a heck of a lot more money, and they're going to have service breaks and complaining about water main breaks and water service. So it's an insurance policy, getting it and keeping at it. So I appreciate the focus.
And what we're not factoring in is we are going to reduce that 10 million a year or whatever it is for water main breaks. We just can't say where that turns and where we knock half of that out. But we'll get there quicker, but as Masa said, the data shows us what you're seeing on our graphs. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, President Doyle, and thank you for that really informative presentation. And Mr. Ozdemore will now tell us how the headquarters building renovation is going.
I will. Good morning, everyone. Steve Ozdemore, Senior Vice President. I'll categorize this summary in order. I don't have any slides. I'll start with the scope of the project. The project is on schedule and awaiting finalization of estimate approval to begin renovation of the second and third floor simultaneously with the lobby. Work areas have been determined, and with the exception of the boardroom area, the interior finishes, workstations, and furniture goes out to bid March 9th. Each board member has been provided renderings to illustrate your available options right now for you guys to decide what you want the boardroom to be. Time. Completion of the second and third floor is scheduled for year-end, as is the boardroom and occupied areas of the first floor. Decluttering of the folks relocating from the operations center will occur this spring and summer, and the final decommissioning of our old headquarters at 1723 Harney will occur through April, with the transfer of possession to Douglas County occurring May 1st. Cost. Currently, we are 16% complete with a fiscal consideration, and no additional funds are necessary. We are tracking along the contemplated budget through completion of the project with design and engineering decisions that have been made. Employee impact. Currently, 120 employees are working at the new headquarters in a temporary environment. The order of deployment has not been determined as far as who moves to the new headquarters in what order who are currently working at the operations center. And our remaining folks working out of 1723 Harney will move out next Friday, the 13th. and into their temporary offices on Monday, March 16th. That impacts about 15 people remaining downtown. No,
Going downtown?
yeah, we have, our building engineer is going to remain there until we transfer possession, and then he's going to separate from service. He's going to call it quits and retire at that point. He's going to see it through. But we'll have security, and there'll be a 6-week period there where we decommission the building, because there's a lot of things that have to occur. Notable events. HBA, our architect, provided a virtual reality tour on February 19th and again on the 26th to experience our design in a 3-dimensional and spatial environment to ensure it meets the objectives we have set to this point. Another notable event is a report of drafts by the employees that are out there. And due to the location of the temporary entrance, there is a draft problem. So we've entered into a contract for a vestibule to be built. It's a custom piece. It will be a permanent piece, and unfortunately, there's a 6 to 8 week lead time from the time that we executed that contract. Next steps: simultaneous renovation of floors 2 and 3, including the lobby. Move out of the remaining employees from 1723 Harney on March 13th. Decommissioning our old headquarters. Engage in weekly owner, architect, and contractor meetings. And declutter and plan order of deployment for our operations center folks. Now this final matter, and this is important. The furniture package for the new headquarters goes out for competitive bid next week to several providers. We expect 12 weeks of lead time necessary for the furniture once the best proposal is accepted, which likely will not occur until the very end of March, best case scenario. The timing of this may result in a last-minute request for board approval due to the April meeting scheduled for the 2nd of next month. If we need to wait until the May board meeting, it will delay the overall schedule by at least 1 month. Regardless of the accepted package, this expense is within the $8.1 million CNA approved at the February board meeting and within the fiscal year 2020 budget. There'll be more on this later. I wanted to give you a heads up. As soon as I know, you'll know. I want to give special appreciation to the task force led by John Zellers and Melissa Polito too. Without their efforts, we wouldn't be in the position we are in. Any questions?
You had some concern, you'd mentioned to me about a possible leak under the entryway.
The draft? Oh,
Yeah, pipe, possibly sewer.
Yeah, so we entered into a 3-way agreement with the existing buildings there for the lift station because we have a shared sewer system. Independent of that, that is being taken care of along, that's why we moved the lobby up to renovate at the same time as the 2nd and 3rd floor. So when the employees move that are temporarily on the 1st floor, move up to the 2nd and 3rd floor, they'll use the main entry and it'll be easier access for them, including the elevators.
So has the break been resolved? Have you figured out what that was?
Not till they tear up the floor. They're gonna tear up the concrete.
Oh, well.
Yeah, and that has not occurred yet.
That sounds major.
Hopefully not, but. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we will now revisit a topic that was reviewed in depth at the previous board meeting, and that's the VOIA 457B, the changes to the Employee Deferred Compensation Program to ensure that our employees are aware of these changes mean. And I've requested this because I think, especially with so much happening, stock market's up, stock market's down, that people need to stay aware.
Thank you, Director Howard, Chairperson Howard, Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and I appreciate the opportunity to come here and address. And so what I wanted to talk about this morning for a few minutes are the changes to the district's 457B plan, and then also the communication plan that management as well as VOIA have conducted to the participants of the plan. So the changes, you may recall, back in November of 2019, I presented, I believe it was myself, presented to you all the changes that were being requested at the direction of VOIA. VOIA is the administrator of the district's 457B plan. The 457B plan is the district's deferred compensation benefit provided to employees, and retirees can also participate in that plan. And those changes include the elimination of what is called a 3% guaranteed minimum interest rate fund, the GMIR fund, and that was, I think, really the catalyst of the request to change. That fund was going to be eliminated, and it is on target to be eliminated, and I believe the date is April 15th. In its place, Voya is creating a separate fund with 2 bridge periods. The first bridge period will be a 12-month period with a 3% guaranteed rate, followed by another 12% period at 2.5%, after which time then that fund goes to, and Joe and Bonnie might have to help me out here, essentially it goes to an index that will fluctuate over the course of each year. In addition to that change, and I would say that's the most significant change, but in addition to that change, we worked with a third-party consultant, Advanced Capital Group, to identify some fund menu changes that we felt were a positive, were a benefit to the participants. Those fund menu changes will be in effect in April, and I believe that those have resulted in a reduction of the fees from 99 basis points to 53 basis points. And so I believe that'll be an experience that will be positive for the participants. So in essence, that is, those are the changes to the plan. The communication piece, we have, so I want to thank Bonnie as well as Joe and their teams on assisting with the communication plan. What we've done, I'll talk about, and Voya has done some additional things that I think that I can speak about as well. So what we did to begin with is send out an email to all users on our email system, and that email was early December, and that it indicated some details as to the changes that were in place, or that were coming. In addition to that, we sent out an email just last month, I'd say early February, again, indicating here's some changes that are coming in place, and here's the date, the times these changes will be in effect. And if there are any questions you may have, here is the contact information for the Voya administrator. In addition to that, we've sent out two postcards, and here's an example postcard that we worked with Voya to come up with, and that Voya communication indicates that the current fixed account is closing to new money. So essentially the vault doors on that account are closing. A new fixed account is opening and the fund menu is changing, and if you have any questions, please call this number. That's the Voya office number. In addition to that, and so there's been 2 postcards sent out, and that's geared to get to the information to the retirees, to those participants that are retirees. So in addition to the 2 postcards, the 2 all-user emails, we have worked with Mike Kane's office, the Voya administrator, to conduct training sessions, educational seminars to all participants that wish to attend. And I would say we have, I think, 1 going on right now at our operations center. We had 1 starting this morning at 9 o'clock. So with that one, we've had 9 that have been completed. And these are taking place at our construction center, the operations center, our new headquarters, 7350 World Communications Drive. And I'm wanting employee impact, how many times I'm going to drive east, heading downtown, before I realize, shoot, I got to turn around and head north. But in addition to that, we've had meetings out at our LNG facility, Platte South, Platte West, and our Florence treatment plant. We have 1 more to go, and that is scheduled for Monday, March 16th. In addition to all of that, we've been in contact with the IBEW leadership, who have identified there might be some folks that work at the water plants on shift times that might not be able to come and meet with these groups. And so we've worked with Mike Kane's office to make sure that he's available, that they know he's available. It's as simple as picking up a phone call, and you would talk to Kim. I believe she would be the first point of contact in his office. Marshall, I believe, also works there, and then Mr. Kane himself, and that those 3 individuals will give all of this information, probably to a much greater detail than I have here this morning, but they will be available for anyone that would call. So with that, that's really, I think, encapsulates the efforts that we've underwent to get this information out to all of our participants.
Any questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being so comprehensive about that and providing so many opportunities for people to know what's going on with their money, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for bringing it to the attention. Hopefully, those folks that can watch this via the, well, we're not doing a live stream, but that this would be another opportunity, so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you, thank you. And lastly, we will now revisit it. Oh, we've already got you. Thank you. Do any of the board members have any additional comments, questions? Well, that's good. Any members of the public in the audience today who would like to make any comments? Very quiet. All right, I appreciate that. The committee meetings have now concluded. We'll reconvene in 10 minutes, which will be about 1:45. So please return to your seats then. I would now like to call the meeting back to order, and if you don't mind doing the roll call.
Howard.
Here.
Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley. Cook. Friend. Frost. McGowan.
I'd like to advise those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall of the Legislative Chamber. I'd also like to remind all of us that this meeting is being broadcast live. Pledge of Allegiance. Now, for those who wish to participate, we will stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes for the committee meetings and regular board meetings for February the 6th, 2020. Do we have a motion?
I move for approval of the minutes of the committee and the general board meeting of February 6th.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Is there any discussion? Thank you. All right, roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
McGowan.
Capital expenditures, do we have a motion to approve that?
I move tab 5. I need to get to that tab. Discussed in committee, I move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. DeBoer dated February 21st.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
McGowan.
Item 6, acceptance of contracts, payment of final estimates, also discussed in committee. Move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. DeBoer dated February 21.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
McGowan.
Item 7, bids on materials and contracts, discussed in committee. Move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. Zellers dated February 21.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
McGowan.
Item number 8, notice of purchases between $25,000 and $50,000 be placed on file.
Do you need a roll call?
Item number 9, services and extensions, main extensions, also discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. O'Brien dated February 20th.
Second. Aye.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
McGowan.
Item 10, wage and salary increases and ratifications. I move that we approve the wage and salary increases and ratifications as outlined in the memo from Bonnie Savine dated February 25th, 2020, and discussed at committee this morning.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
McGowan.
Tanya?
I would ask that in light of the fact that no change has been made to the positions previously taken by the board on the legislative bills reviewed in Mr. Kubat's letter dated February 24th, 2020, I would ask that this report be placed on file.
Any discussion? Good. Thank you. Other matters of district business for discussion, and I have a couple of announcements I would like to make. The April board meeting will be held in room 702, which is on the 7th floor of the Douglas County Civic Center. That's in the part of the building that borders 19th Street. I'm sure what the elevators would be probably your best bet for taking up there, maybe your only bet. The temporary change in location is due to some renovations that will be taking place in this chamber to update audio and visual capacities, and hopefully we will be back in here in May. And number 2, this is dear to my heart too. The annual Heat the Streets Run and Walk for Warmth is this coming Saturday, 9 o'clock in Exarban Village. for all those who are here today, please join us in supporting this cause. Tracy, Bonnie, so many people pitch in. Stephanie, I'm looking at you. This is a family-friendly event. It's jointly sponsored by the employees from MUD and from OPPD, and it's always a great event. Last year, it was so cold, I thought we were going to freeze our tail feathers off. This year, we're really lucky the weather's good. The funds raised through registrations and donations are used for utility assistance, which provides much-needed support to customers in our community who are struggling to pay their utility bills. Online registration is now closed, but you can show up the day of the event, Saturday, and register. All are welcome to cheer on the runners and the walkers if you can, and to make a donation online through the Heat the Streets website. Do any of the board members have any additional comments? I'll be seeing you all on Saturday at 9 o'clock. That's good. Any members of the public have any comments? Good. We're going to go into a closed session.
Well, how about, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we go into closed session for
Thank you.
discussion of litigation and personnel.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Howard,
Thank you. Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Bagley,
Yes.
Cook, Friend,
Yes.
McGowan.
No gavel?
Nope.
sorry. McGowan.
Does anyone have any comments they would like to make? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Did we get a second? Any discussion on that motion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh. Bagley. Cook. Friend. McGowan.